Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2026 John Deere Classic Data Dive Show. Per usual, on a Monday night, we're going to take our first look at the forecast for Silvis, Illinois, see if we need to factor in the forecast and any possible wave advantages. We will take a deep statistical dive into historical John Deere classics, see the types of players and the skill sets that generally perform well around TBC Deere Run, and of course we'll go through the rabbit hole and see the players in the field this week who most fit those skill sets. So we have a lot to cover. Let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and moving forward are from both the rabbit hole over at BetSperts and Fantasy National. The rabbit hole is acquiring or merging with Fantasy National, so I'm in the process myself of migrating my files and my data over to the rabbit hole formatting. But make sure you are subscribed to the rabbit hole. Has everything you need week in and week out on the PGA Tour to make the right wagers, to make the best lineups possible. Has a lineup optimizer, tournament simulator. They are starting to bring in some former functionality over from Fantasy National, articles from the top minds in the industry. So you really are missing out if you aren't subscribed to the rabbit hole. Make sure you're doing that. It is well worth your investment. In the description of the video, there are links to all the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I post research early on in the week regarding some tournament info, patterns of previous winners, things of that nature. I have put that on hold while I get all caught up and migrated over to rabbit hole formatting. But when that resumes, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see the players I've wagered with my own money, the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. It's a fantastic way to start your week preparation. Make sure you follow him over on social media as well. Show him some support. Lastly, for this intro, we're live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you. Any lasting thoughts from the 2026 Travelers? What do you think of Victor Hovland winning in the playoff earlier this morning? And then moving forward to the John Deere, have you made any wagers? Who are you targeting? What kind of data are you wanting to dig deep into tonight? So any questions or thoughts, put them in the chat. Be more than happy to get to those. If you're not able to catch the show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2026 John Deere. Now, normally we start over at the extended forecast for the tournament on a Monday night. However, you see that we have the GCSA tournament fact sheet came out earlier today. So we're going to cover this very quickly since we were not able to do this last night. Good evening, Pre. Good evening, Joanne. Thanks to both of you for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you all had some positive efforts at the Travelers. I tell you what, I didn't see either of you in last night's show. My Travelers got off to a bang with Eric Cole leading after Thursday. Scotty playing well. Snedeker playing well on Thursday. Rye, Harmon. I mean, everything was coming up Millhouse. Thursday I was 20xing my money and all this stuff. I had several lineups that were in the top 10 of the various contests I played, and then the rest of the tournament happened. Eric Cole backs up. Harmon, Rye couldn't build on that momentum. Of course, Scotty finishing second was a solid play, but it was a good week. It honestly feels like a losing week for me. Considering I was making a lot of money after Thursday and watching it dwindle away throughout the week. But it was still a solid week. I really only had one really bad player that I used a lot. That was Ryan Fox. He did not play well. I avoided the Cam Youngs and I avoided Xander, who was really disappointing. Unfortunately, I was not on Sepp Straka. I warned you about Sepp Straka, so hopefully you stayed away from Sepp after, watching the show last Wednesday, as I was, quite a bit worried, and we saw that he did not play well. at TBC River Highlands. So hopefully both of you all had success, followed in my footsteps a little bit. Would have been great if you had the victor outright. Good evening, Moss. Thanks for jumping in chat. Thanks for tuning in this evening. Very much appreciated. Can you take a look at Springer in Vegas? I will do that when we get into some player stuff here. Started off great, then fell off a cliff. That is exactly how it went for me, Joanne. Like I went into Thursday. I felt very, very, very smart, and then my intelligence dropped throughout the week. But that's such as it is. You can't be perfect all the time. So my week seemed like it went a lot like yours, Joanne. You definitely did warn me. Cam killed me too. Yeah. So unfortunate that you had seems like a bad week. Hopefully we'll get you on the right track this week. Good evening, Freebird. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Got me on this weekend. Thanks for consistent hard work, of course. I say it all the time, generally in the outro, but I'm just very appreciative that people take the time to tune in, watch, listen, even when it's not live. You all could very well do other things with your time. With you making the decision to dedicate to listening to me is not unnoticed on my end. So I'm just appreciative of you all tuning in and watching and listening. So very much appreciated on that. Let's get into this here. I'll try to cover this GCSA fact sheet very quickly. Not a whole lot has changed. Again, this is a DA Wavering design. We are playing TBC Deere Run in Silvis, Illinois, otherwise known as the Quad Cities. Most prominently known probably is Davenport, Iowa. DA Wavering design. We are in a traditional par 71 with 4 par 3s, 3 par 5s. It's interesting that they have not updated the yardage. This still is listing at 7,289, which they added 30 yards to a hole. We talked about this a little bit last night. The 4th hole was redesigned. Fairway was narrowed. 3 bunkers added. The tee was moved back 30 yards to lengthen the hole. So yeah, because the true yardage is much more closer to 73.30, if you will. So it's interesting that the tournament fact sheet still has the, I'm going to say, old yardage, even though they did add a tee to the 4th. But still, we're dealing with a shorter course, especially as a par 71. We are on L93 bent. That is the specific strand, but bent grass greens. We're on bent throughout the course, collars, fairways. And then we are dealing with the same kind of rough we've dealt with for the past probably 3 or so weeks. I believe Toronto had bluegrass and fescue mix. I know the Travelers had this bluegrass and fescue mix. Shinnecock, I think, also had this. So the difference being that this rough is pretty long and it's very hard to play out of, or it can be hard to play out of. You see this rough penalty is high, so generally accuracy is more necessary than distance around Deere Run. The greens, slightly smaller than the PGA Tour average, 5,500 square feet versus an average on the PGA Tour of about 6,000 square feet. So slightly smaller greens. They're generally fast. Now the rabbit hole will say average, but they're generally fairly fast and fairly firm, depending on the weather, which we'll get into here momentarily. In the Midwest, thunderstorms are a common occurrence. I myself am in the Great Lakes Midwest, so I'm, in relation to a lot of other places in the United States, I'm somewhat local. I'm a state over from Illinois. So, I can attest to that weather really can dictate how the course and the tournament plays. And thunderstorms can just pop up. That's very common in the Midwest. So, not a whole lot of fairway, but these fairways are generally fairly easy to hit. Quite a bit of rough. This is a big, big property. Only 3 holes with water in play. Again, not a whole lot has changed over the years here at TBC Deere Run. The biggest change this year is the addition of a tee on the fourth hole. So there's a look at the GCSA tournament fact sheet. We'll now go over to Wind Finder and take a look at the extended forecast for the tournament. Looks like there is some wind possibility on Thursday, particularly early Thursday. A lot of gusty winds. That looks like it's going to calm down throughout the day. Again, 2.5 days out from the start of the tournament. Hard to put a whole lot of confidence into this forecast, but you would have to argue that if this forecast holds throughout the week, that the Thursday p.m., Friday a.m. portion would have the better half of the draw based on this forecast. But again, it is too far in advance to really start mandating that or taking that into consideration. So we'll update this on Wednesday night at the beginning of the show. But what is clear is that it looks like there's going to be a decent amount of wind throughout the week, and it's going to be very hot. I can tell you where I am locally, we are having heat warnings, and we are threatening record highs in our area, local for me. So it's going to be hot. It's going to be humid. Unless we get a bunch of rain, which it doesn't look like is in the forecast for Silvis, looks like the course is going to be pretty firm. Now, Saturday does look like there's a good chance for some precipitation. And then Sunday looks great. Sunday looks beautiful. Low 80s. So it looks like a cold front is coming through Saturday in Silvis, Illinois, which would be nice if it comes through my way on Sunday, but I digress. So regardless, we're going to be looking at some wind performance a little bit tonight. And then again, depending on where you get your source of information for weather, whether you want to look at Wind Finder yourself or you hear from other pundits on the internet how the forecast looks, right now you would have to argue that the Thursday p.m., Friday a.m. has the advantage. We'll update it Wednesday night. There's a look at the forecast. We'll now move over to the rabbit hole. Here at BetSperts, the Travelers data is in now that that finished earlier today with Victor Hovland beating Scotty in a playoff. I didn't see or watch the playoff. All I know is that Scotty had a very, very close putt and missed on the first hole of the playoff. But anyway, we just got done taking a look at the forecast. So let's take a look at moderate and windy conditions. See who in this field has performed the best in those conditions. I am going to set this time frame for 2026. Your top performers in the field this week in moderate and windy conditions for the John Deere: Chris Goddard, Eric Cole, Jacob Bridgman, David Skins, Tom Kim, Blades Brown. Quite a few less rounds for Blades Brown and David Skins for that matter, but they've played well in the wind in a smaller sample size. Suter Sean has played well in the wind. Seabez, ADDC, and Jordan Spieth are your top 10 in terms of total performance in the wind in 2026. Ben Griffin, Ben Coles, Kevin Roy, Taylor Moore, Paul Peterson, Koivun in only one tournament. It was the U.S. Open, so that's very impressive. But Koivun played well in an extremely small sample size in the wind. Doug Gim, Bauschow, Berger, Putnam. Players who have not been as good in the wind this year: Adam Schenk, Garrick Higo, Toasty, Patton Kazire, Rozo. Just trying to highlight guys with enough rounds or that have the name recognition: Brian Campbell, Davis Riley, Malnati, Glover, Nico Echeverria, Dunlap, Johnny Vegas. You asked about Johnny Vegas he has not been good in the wind. So now that he's here on the screen, why don't we take our quick look here at Johnny Vegas. This doesn't feel like a great Johnny Vegas fit, just because Distance really isn't the be-all, end-all here. I do think it can help. But you take a look at these past winners. Brian Campbell, one of the shortest hitters on the PGA Tour. Davis Thompson's not long by any means. Sepp Straka, not long. Poston is short. Lucas Glover's one of the shortest. Fratelli's not terribly long. You see Bryson, don't get that mixed up. This is a very different Bryson from what he is now. This is well before he was the the person he is today. This was a very, very young rookie or maybe second year Bryson. Jordan Spieth's never been long. Zach Johnson, never long. Steve Stricker. So length absolutely not mandatory here. So that's the first kind of thing I would note about Johnny Vegas. He's also not been in great form lately. Yes, he played the Travelers, but wasn't particularly great. The irons have been pretty abysmal. Past 3 especially. Losing 8 at the Memorial. Losing 2.5 in Toronto. Losing 4 3/4 last week at the Travelers. There's not a lot to go on here, There really isn't. And if we look at his John Deere performance, I'm a little surprised. He's actually been pretty solid here. Now, do note that it's been a while since he's played consistently here. He's got the top 20 3 years ago. I guess technically 2 years ago. Does have the 11th in 2021. He's generally hit his irons well here. If he didn't have this course history, I would say this is an easy ignore. There's something about this course that he seems to take to. And I'll be honest, the John Deere is generally known as one of the stickier tournaments, meaning, past success indicating, future prominence or future success. Past performance indicating future success. So I'm still probably not going to play Johnny Vegas, but that course history at least gives me some pause, and makes me think about it. But yeah, I don't like these irons. How's he been on bent? Not very good. One other thing we can look at, we looked at performance in moderate and windy conditions. I don't think anybody is going to really gripe too much when you hear that this is a weak field. It's not necessarily alternate level field like a Myrtle Beach or a Puerto Rico or a Corrales, but it's a pretty darn weak field, to all due respect to the players playing in the field this week. So in fields that are very weak and weak, Higo, Ben Griffin, Brian Campbell, Rico Hoey, Thorbjornsen, Seabez, Thorbjorn Olesen, Vince Whaley, Stephen Fisk, Max Homa are your top 10. Davis Thompson, who's also been very good around TPC Deere Run, just outside the top 10. Where does Vegas fall in terms of weak fields? He hasn't played a weak field event. I find that hard to believe, but it says he hasn't. If we expand this out to 2024, certainly he played in. There we go. So he's been okay. Was all of this in 2024? You bet it was. Holy smokes. So he might not have any data for 2025 and 2026 in very weak and weak fields, but Bermuda wasn't great. I mean, he made the cut and then really fell apart on the weekend. Missed the cut at El Cardinal a couple falls ago. Zozo was good. Sanderson Farms was good. Yeah, I don't know. Interesting. And then you asked about Hayden Springer. I'll bring him up after a little bit. I want to make sure I cover a few other things here as well before we really dig in deep. We took a look at the wind because we looked at the forecast. Took a look at very weak and weak fields. The overwhelming filter that we're going to be looking at this week, very easy and easy. This is one of the easier courses on the PGA Tour. 18 under technically would be average, but minus 15 only got you into the top 17 last year. Davis Thompson boat raced everybody to 28 under, and even then 20 under only got you into the top 16. So you got to go low here. 21 under, 21, 19, 21. Michael Kim 27 quite a few years back. You got to get a lot of birdies around TBC Deere Run to contend. So your top performers in the field this week in the John Deere on very easy scoring conditions: Ben Griffin, Kevin Roy, Andrew Putnam, Gary Kigo, Blades Brown, Seabez, Christian Bezadenhout, Pearson Cootie, Keith Mitchell, Thorbjorn Olsen, and Chris Gotterup are your top 10. Balsho, Hoey, Grazerman, Kevin Yu, who's also been really good here in 2 or 3 tries. Davis Thompson, Koivu, Spieth, Hodges. Just out of curiosity, where has Vegas been? Vegas has not been good in very easy scoring conditions. One of those is probably because of the putter. The putter can really betray Vegas a lot. So, interesting good course history, but in no form. So, and then I guess while we're thinking about it, or at least while I'm thinking about it, we'll take a look at Hayden Springer just very quickly. Somebody that I've tried to back a couple of times. I think I tried to back him quite a bit at Craig Ranch. Did not go my way since he missed the cut, but it was about the best kind of miscut you could ask for. He just lost it all on the greens, but he's missed 3 cuts in a row. I don't remember him having an amazing history here. A top 10 in a T44. He's putt well here. I don't know. It's fine, I guess. Especially if we're talking, like DFS. 6,900 absolutely is, I think, a fair price on Springer. Now, would I want to play somebody else instead of Springer at his price point? Probably. Like Luke Clanton's been really good here. Hoagie is kind of interesting at that same price. Of course, you had Johnny Vegas $100 less. Shipley kind of interesting, especially if you're looking at somebody that's off the tee oriented, who can also putt some bent a little bit. Like Shipley's been amazing off the tee all year, in slightly better form with the irons. He just hasn't putt well, but can spike, as you see here from Craig Ranch. So I at those prices, I don't think they're horrible. I probably would rather go a couple other places, though, than those 2 names. But good questions. Keep them coming in. I'll try to get to them as much as I can. Springer did shoot 59 here a few years. Appreciate it. Yeah. I don't remember the 59 here, but okay. Let's go back to Springer just very quickly. Now you have me very interested. So, that round 1, yeah, in 2024. Doing Hayden Springer things, he just really put the daylights out that round. Okay, again, I tried to limit myself on the round by round, especially when you have a round like that. I mean, that can just be a hot putter, a couple of decent breaks, but it's worth noting. Absolutely. Okay. Anything else in terms of a big picture view we want to look at? We took the look at the scoring conditions. I even looked at field strength, looked at the wind. Everything else I'm probably going to take a look at in terms of a specific stat view. So with that, I'll get that prepped. We're going to go to off the tee. Unfortunately, we don't have the charts that are, make the data look a lot cleaner with the color coding and all that stuff. We can still get that data. It's just it's not gonna be as visually appealing. But I talked about this a lot last night. Driver usage here at TBC Deere Run has increased quite a bit over the years. From 63% in 2021 all the way up to 76% essentially last year. It has steadily gone up year over year, so I would expect that to continue. Lot more drivers being used, but driving accuracy hasn't necessarily changed all that much. So these fairways are pretty easy to hit. The greens are pretty easy to hit. You look at approach, green and regulation percentage 71 versus an average of the PGA Tour of 66. So yeah, that's why I think distance could help a little bit this week. We might take a look at see who's been good off the tee recently with this. I still think we need to factor in some accuracy, especially because the rough is hard to play out of here. And then we took a look at some approach. If we look at approach shot distributions, we're looking at wedges. 50 to 150. Like we have a lot more 50 to 125 here. We have quite a bit more in the 125 to 150. We got a lot of wedges, so we're going to be focused on, these ranges here in terms of proximities, opportunities. Around the green is listed as average here, but it's all because of the short grass. Short grass scrambling is difficult around TBC Deere Run, but nothing else around the green is. Easy and average from rough and sand. So we might look at some short grass proximity, perhaps. But generally speaking, if a player's relying on their around the green a lot, they're just falling behind. Like we take a look at these past champions, like Brian Campbell's really bad off the tee, so he did rely on his around the green a little bit, but he was really good with the putter, really good with the irons. Like look at the iron play here. You have to get all the way down to Koivu from last year before you find a negative in approach. A slight negative in Kitayama putting. And then like Davis Thompson, complete gain. Like look at, all 5 of these guys were complete gains. Again, Ben Griffin slightly less off the tee. But you don't have these humongous numbers. Like Hayden Springer did well in 2024 off the tee. Top 10, runner-up, a 5th from Carson Young. But it's really in the irons. Come on. Top 20, runner-up, top 20, top 5. Even last year, Brian Campbell, top 25, top 15, top 15, top 25. Your winner was high up here. Probably led in putting as well. Close to it. No, not even. Nick Dunlap put the daylights out last year. Koivu put the daylights out. So that's what you're going to get. You're going to have to try and find your guys that are just going to go nuclear with the putter, which is really, really hard to predict. Although, we can certainly take a look at, like, for example, Nick Dunlap. What kind of putting form was he in coming into the John Deere last year? No putting form at all. Koivu, let's try Higo. Koivu probably doesn't have enough tournaments. Just out of curiosity, Higo, he played the John Deere. He wasn't in the best of putting form. Campbell, the winner. Why don't we check him? He is good on bent though, so that's something. John Deere, like he had lost quite a bit in his past 3, so it's not even putting form coming in. So that's why I'm really kind of looking at the irons, maybe a little bit off the tee. Some other things here. Putting, we'll take a look at. 3-point avoidance, not a big deal. Why don't we look at the putting ranges? Let's see. 3 to 5 feet, quite a bit easier. 4 to 8 feet is a whole lot easier here. 5 to 10 feet's a lot easier. So does it get difficult anywhere? Not particularly. So many more putts are made on these greens than your PGA Tour average, which makes sense. These greens don't have a lot of undulation or sloping or contouring to them. I'll bring up Microsoft Excel. I don't know how much we're really going to glean from this. Like I said, I haven't been able to catch all the way up and do, all of these tournaments and stuff. I am caught up to the Travelers. But like this number here, 0.38, is slightly higher than the PGA Tour average of a 0.34. It's just down at the bottom of your screen. Putting is really the biggest factor at the John Deere. So we're going to try and find, I guess, our best bent putters. Perhaps the guys that are putting well from, maybe inside 10 feet or inside 15 feet maybe. Distance has gone up slightly year over year. That's just out of curiosity. Like, total driving is a 51 average. That's not it. Driving accuracy, 67. Yeah, accuracy, maybe a little bit. I'm interested in these par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Like, where... before that, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but before that, let's take a look at, like, shots in these various ranges. 6.75, 23.7, that's a lot. 6.75 versus a 5.4 and a 19. Yeah, so we're looking at those ranges for sure. I just wanted to confirm. Let's take a look at these 3s, 4s, and 5s and see where the top 30 generally are making their hay. Looks like the longer par 3s. The par 4s, look at that. The par 4s are evenly split on those strokes gained. 0.11, 0.11, 1.1, and then a 1.2. So very, very close there. So we're looking at a lot of par 4 scoring like we have the past few weeks with all these par 70 courses. Okay. All right. Again, like I said, it's the data that we can get in the rabbit hole. It just doesn't look as pretty. It doesn't have... let's go to Bay Hill. It's not laid out in a nice way like this, unfortunately. TPC Deere Run. Maybe if I went off of it and came back to it, it comes back. Nope. That was hopeful. Okay, so let's go through these various page views and see the players we want to kind of focus in on this week. I am going to look at a little bit at off the tee. With driver being used much more, I do think distance is going to be a little bit more of a factor than it normally is. So just in the past 24 rounds, just recent, your top off the tee players in the field this week at the John Deere: Michael Brennan, Doug Gim, Neil Shipley, Keith Mitchell, Johnny Kiefer, Toasty, Rico Hoey, Gordon Sargent, Pearson Cootie, and Jackson Suber. Top 10 off the tee. Really, I like a lot of this except for maybe Toasty and Gordon Sargent because they're hitting fairways as well. Driving accuracy. Fabian Gomez, it's only a couple tournaments. Griot, who I think's had an amount of success here. I feel like he should. I think he's had a run here. Yeah, he finished runner-up a couple times. So that makes a lot of sense for me. Grillo's generally a pretty solid driver of the golf ball. Good evening, Casey. Thanks for jumping to chat. Much appreciated. Be Sunday, so I need a sweat to have. Yeah, that would be nice. I had my sweat Thursday, considering I was making all that money in DFS, and then my players kind of backed up a little bit. But thanks for jumping to chat, Casey. Very much appreciated this evening. Thanks for tuning in. Ben Coles, somebody else to look at. If you're looking at the upper sixes there take a look at Ben Coles. Ben Coles has been playing very well lately. His putter is not the best, which, all this emphasis in putting maybe might shy you away a little bit, but the guy's hitting his irons just immaculately right now. Top 25 Shinnecock. Hasn't lost strokes with approach on the PGA Tour this season. Now, he has been splitting time between the Korn Ferry and the PGA Tour, and I'm not collecting Korn Ferry Tour stats, but, he's been playing very well. Somebody else you can look at, in that bottom portion of the price board, if you will. Good evening, Antoine. Thanks for jumping to chat. Much appreciated. All aboard the JT Poston train. Next stop, Moneyville. I do believe you said that about somebody last week. Didn't quite come to fruition. The only thing I will warn you about with Poston, and I understand he's a former champion here, Antoine. The only thing I would caution you on is that he probably hasn't played as well as you think he's played. Yes, he won the Memorial. I'm taking nothing away from him on that. But then he top fives the U.S. Open while losing strokes on approach. He really was, it really was smoke and mirrors at Shinnecock. And you kind of saw that this past week at the Travelers with how poorly he played around TBC River Highlands. Now, all that being said, he is, or has, usually been pretty darn good at the John Deere with the win in 2022. Top 10 the year after. JT Poston is certainly a very high risk, very high reward play this week. And in that regard, I don't hate the outright idea for him. I would much rather wager this player outright than I would play him in DFS. If he's got an extremely low floor, or put it another way, if his range of outcomes are this extreme, from win to being one of the worst in the field, I'd rather wager that person. Personally, that's my take. You might disagree. I don't know what his number was. I was not really all that interested in JT Poston. I made wagers this week, or for the week earlier this morning. JT Poston wasn't one of them. I just wanted to give you that little nugget of info there, Antoine, that he probably hasn't been playing as well as you might think based on, his recent performances. But thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Keep the comments and questions coming in. I'll do my best to get to all of them, but I want to make sure I cover what I want to and in somewhat of a timely fashion. But yes, I'm really kind of focused on the accuracy this week. So Grillo makes a lot of sense. Ben Coles, Jackson Koivu being, brand new professional on the PGA Tour, having, a quite prestigious amateur career and college career. We'll have to see what his ownership is like, but he's played well here in the past. Zach Johnson, who's, used to be Mr. TPC Deere Run, way back more in his prime. Shipley, somebody I mentioned, Lucas Glover. So, going to take a look at accuracy. I do like off the tee. I also like good drives. Making sure you're in the fairway, you're hitting greens. Is there any kind of filter I want to do here? I took a look at good drives when the rough penalty was high last night, and it did not lead to a lot of names that were inspiring. Lucas Glover. In fact, let me back this out to 2025. Good drives. Yeah. It didn't lead to a whole lot of inspiring names like Fratelli, Fabian Gomez. If we do a minimum, yeah, there we go. Minimum rounds. Let's say, see, Ben Coles here has 14. Let's do minimum 12 rounds. Top good drives players when the rough penalty is high. Paul Peterson, Ben Coles, Lucas Glover, who I think's also had a decent run here in the not so distant past. Oh yeah. Top 5, top 10, winner in 2021. So you see in the types of players that generally perform well, at least off the tee wise, these shorter hitters that keep the ball in play. They're not going to overwhelm you with distance, and then can kind of get hot with the putter, or at least be serviceable. But this is what I'm talking about when I say sticky course history. When past performance indicating future success. Like, look at all the success that Lucas Glover has had here. Look at all the success like Johnny Vegas has had here. It means something. Top 25, top 10, win, top 10, top 25, top 5. John Deere course history generally means quite a bit. Some other notables here in good drives. Joel Damon, McGreevy, Rico Hoey, Carson Young. Also kind of interesting, Keith Mitchell, who's been playing very well. I know he wasn't great at the Travelers, but it wasn't terrible. He's been ball striking. Gosh dang it. He's been ball striking it well. You know, if we get a field average putter out of Keith Mitchell, continuing to ball strike it like he is, expect Keith Mitchell to be in contention. Gosh dang it, I meant to check what he's done here before. What has he done around John Deere? Not terrible. Kind of needs the putter to cooperate, obviously, but top 20, historical top 10. Not the worst. Not the best. Not the worst. Thor Bjornsson, somebody I'm very high on this week. Generally a very long and accurate player. He's had decent amounts of success here as well at the John Deere. Not finishing anywhere outside the top 25. So that's the way I'm looking at off the tee. I might put a little bit of off the tee in the mixed condition model come Wednesday night. Won't be much because I am going to be more focused on accuracy, going to be more focused on good drives, things of that nature. Let's take a look at approach. I don't think it's any surprise that you're going to have to hit your irons very well to be in contention at TBC Deere Run. Looks like the rabbit hole is struggling. There we go. Approach. And this calendar year, 24 rounds. Tom Kim. Somebody else who I've wagered this week. Put that bet in very early this morning. I liked his number. I like the way he's been playing. Did miss the cut here last year. That's not the best, but I mean he's been playing very, very well. And like the opposite of what I was saying about Poston, like Tom Kim actually played pretty, like ball struck it well around Shinnecock with the putting, with the around the green. Look at his irons. His irons have really rounded into form after kind of being dead last year and early this year. His irons are really starting to come back. He hasn't putt well on bent. That's a little bit surprising, but we know that the putter can spike. Oh, I like Tom Kim quite a bit this week. I'm hoping he's not terribly popular at 8,700, but he probably will be. Top iron players in the field this week. Last 24 rounds. Tom Kim. There's Ben Coles, like I was mentioning. Johnny Kiefer, Mark Hubbard. I still like Eric Cole. I know he, after having a blisteringly hot start to the Travelers, I know he fell off over the weekend. Boy, Sunday's round was really bad. That really tanked a lot of my lineups. But even so, he still finished positive for the week in irons. It was the first time he lost strokes putting in forever. And I feel like he's had a decent run here. Yeah, I'm more so remembering the 2024. Okay, it's not as good of a history as I was thinking, but still, there's some there. Still don't mind Eric Cole, I don't think. Zach Blair, Luke Clanton, Seabez, Keegan, Zach Bauschow, your top 10 in irons. Suber, McGreevy, Dylan Wu, Blades Brown, Matt Wallace, rounding out your top 15. Guys who have not hit their irons well. Gordon Sargent, Jimmy Stanger, Chandler Phillips, Sung Jae, Chris Ventura, Max Homa, Rogers, Troy Merritt, Kanaya, Kevin Roy, Luke List, Whaley, Lauer, Highsmith. So there you go. Definitely going to look at proximities. Actually, I take that back. Let's go to scoring opportunities. The old opportunities gained from Fantasy National. Still the same. It's the same data you're measuring here. It's just labeled differently. We're looking at 50 to 150. So I'm going to start at the 100 to 150. And let's do inside 15 feet. Scoring opportunities gained players. You see these three only have a handful of shots that come into that range. So your number one player really, Ben Coles. In fact, let me do the minimum 12 rounds again. That would help. Top opportunities gained players from 101 to 150, kind of the money range here at TBC Deere Run. Ben Coles, Carson Young, Blades Brown, Austin Eckroat, Tom Kim, Chan Kim, Paul Peterson, Adam Hadwin. Okay, Adam Hadwin sighting. Doug Gim, who played well, not Shinnecock, but Toronto. That's right. Played very well in Toronto. So, interesting. Okay. Smotherman, Davis Chatfield, Blanchet, Lucas Glover again, Tom Hoagie, Lee Hodges. If you want to look at the 50 to 100, I would more so put the emphasis in the 101 to 150. But 50 to 100, Camilo Villegas, Tom Kim again. So that's another reason why I'm very high on Tom Kim. His wedges have been excellent this year. Ben Silverman, Paul Peterson, somebody who's been a mad scientist play in the not so distant past. I might roster him a time or two if I'm down here in the mid sixes. His wedges have been good. Kevin Roy, Dylan Wu, Jeffrey Kang, Rico Hoey. Again, Lucas Glover. Very, very solid from 50 to 150. Hoagie, excellent from 50 to 150. Van Rooyen, pretty solid. Eric Cole, at least getting inside 15 feet. Now, getting inside 10, a little bit different story, but I usually go 15 feet because that's a decent opportunity. Ben Coles again. Chandler Phillips. Blades Brown. Chan Kim, as long as it's within 15 feet. You going inside 10 feet, Chan Kim, absolutely not. Zach Bauschow. Toasty. Fisk. Gim, Kiefer. Interesting. Okay. Interesting stuff there. So there's your scoring opportunities. Now, let's see if that lines up with overall proximity. Overall proximity, 101 to 150. I'm going to go last 24 rounds just to make sure. Doug Gim's there. Suber, Blades Brown, Mark Hubbard rises there. Luke Clanton, Tom Hoagie, Paul Peterson, Tom Kim, Joel Damon, Seamus Power. Top 10 in terms of overall proximity, 101 to 150. All right, Ben Cole's just outside the top 10. Seabez, Smotherman, Lauer, Cole, Dunlap, Lucas Glover again. Around the green, if I do anything around the green, and I might not, if I do anything around the green, it's going to be scrambling from short grass or short grass proximity. So short grass proximity, Suter Sean, Bo Hostler, Peter Malnati, Paul Peterson. There's Hayden Springer for you, you asked about. So in a limited sample size, he's at least been pretty solid with his short grass chipping. Hubbard, Dunlap, Webb Simpson, Tyler Duncan. If we do scrambling, I would have to add, let's do scrambling on bent, because scrambling incorporates some putting. If we do that, scrambling from short grass on bent surfaces, you see just how few rounds are here. I'd have to bring this back out to 2025. Still very few rounds here, but Goddard, Chad Ramey, Mackenzie Hughes, Putnam, Tony Finau, Mac Meisner, Suber, Bridgman, Kanaya, Justin Lauer. Something else we're talking about, like these past performances. Don't forget, Chris Goddard's been pretty solid here in a number of tries. Top 5, top 25. Did miss the cut 2 years ago, but he's got some pretty solid performances here. So at the top of the top of the price board, that probably tells you where I'm going. More than likely. I mean, I still have my model to make and all that, but Goddard's got some pretty solid history here, and good scrambler from the short grass. We all know about his driver and how it's a weapon for him, so interesting. Take a look at putting. We're going to look at putting on bent. Pearson Cootie, Taylor Montgomery, Jackson Koivu, Max Homa, AJ Ewert, Higo, Denny McCarthy. You want to talk about a guy who's got amazing course history. I understand the form he's in is not great. The irons have at least showed a little bit of life lately. I'm talking just a microscopic hint of life lately. He was actually positive off the tee at the Travelers last week. Denny McCarthy is amazing around TBC Deere Run. 4 straight top 11s. Like, if I played all of the Brian Harmon last week because of all of his performance at the Travelers, I'm probably going to play some Denny McCarthy. I'm not nearly as high on McCarthy this week as I was Harmon last week. That said, I'm still probably going to play some Denny McCarthy because of this immaculate history that he has here. He's never top 5'd, but he's been excellent the past 4 years here. Now, he's not in nearly the form that Brian Harmon is in, but he is showing some signs of life. So don't be surprised if McCarthy ends up being worthwhile, especially at his, 8,200. That's a little high. Maybe not. We'll see. We'll see what ownerships look like come Wednesday night. Whaley, Wallace, Jonathan Bird, Ben Griffin. Just out of curiosity, what's Ben Griffin done here? It's been pretty good, hasn't it? Okay. Miscut in the top 5, so 2 polar opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, he misses the cut because he couldn't make a putt here last year. Otherwise, he's been pretty decent ball striking wise here. Okay, but nothing compared to Chris Goddard in his performances here. So that's why I'm liking Goddard at the top of the board early on this week. Anyway, there's your top putters on Bent. Griffin, Ventura, Malnati, Jeremy Paul, Eric Cole, Ben Silverman, Ben Martin, Kuchar, Brian Campbell, defending champion, 20th. Let's do birdies or better. You're absolutely going to have to go low at the John Deere to contend. So your top birdies or better players when scoring is easy: Koivu, Brennan, Grazerman, Blades Brown, Johnny Kiefer, Pearson Cootie, Ben Griffin, Keith Mitchell, Bausho, Bridgman, Sungjae, Eric Cole, Haotong Lee. Kevin Yu's got some good history here as well. Nico, Smotherman, Danny Walker, Suber, Higo, Goddard, Finau, Hoagie. All right. So opportunities gained when it's easy. Smotherman, Haotong Lee got fewer rounds than I would like, but Eric Cole, Lucas Glover, Brennan, Zach Blair, Blades Brown, Tyler Duncan's got several opportunities, just hasn't converted them. Sudarshan, Webb Simpson, Merritt, Kuchar, Blanchet. There's Griot again. Suber, Lipsky. Okay. Last thing I'll check, unless there's other questions, let's check par 4 scoring. And I'm just going to look at par 4s in general. There's a good mix of par 4s here. Now, obviously, the majority of them fall into that 400 to 450. You got 395. 454 can come down under 450, but 433, 367, 428, 432, 424. Lots of shorter par 4s. But I'm just going to sort on all par 4s. Minimum 12 rounds. Your top par 4 performers: Blades Brown, Jacob Bridgman, Ben Silverman, Jimmy Stanger, Ben Coles, Chris Goddard, Ryo Itsatsune, Tom Kim, AJ Ewart, Paul Peterson, Ricky, Davis Thompson, Keith Mitchell, Pavone, Seabez, Ben Griffin, Eric Cole, Bausho. God Lord, how many people are tied for 11th? Fisk, Lee, Gim, Sudarshan. So give these guys a little bit of extra boost, because par 4s is where you make it up at TBC Deere Run. All right, I'm going to bring us back to here. I'll bring up performance at the John Deere Classic the past few years. But is there any player or any metric that you all would like to see before I sign off for the evening? There we go. I needed to change this. Sorry. Let's go January 2022. So, going back to 2022, your top performers at the John Deere Classic have been Davis Thompson. What's he been up to lately? He's been really good here. He's been really bad lately. Okay. But his performance around here has been immaculate. The win, of course, 2 years ago. Top 20 last year. T31 in his inaugural. McCarthy, Thorbjornsen, Griot, Brennan Todd, Clanton, JT Poston, Brian Campbell, Kevin Yu, and Lucas Glover are your top 10 total performers at the John Deere going back to 2022. If you take a look at irons, Luke Clanton, Power, Gim, Thorbjornsen, William Mao, Lucas Glover, Eckroat, Lee Hodges, Roy, and Tom Kim. This is specifically at TBC Deere Run. And then top putters, Brendan Todd, Koivu, Davis Thompson, Nick Dunlap, Higo, Kevin Yu, Campbell, Rogers, McCarthy, Novak, Griot, Bridgman. I didn't bet Griot this week. Boy, he's popped up a lot tonight. Was thinking Tom Kim could win. Good evening, Z. Thanks for jumping to chat. Much appreciated. I know you just jumped into chat, but Tom Kim is one of the first names I wagered this morning. I really like Tom Kim. The scare or the worry with Tom Kim is that he's only played here once, and it was a missed cut. Generally, past performance indicates future success at the John Deere. It's one of the stickier tournaments, so that's something that you would have to be mindful of. But I am with you, Z. I like Tom Kim quite a bit. Pre-ask, can you take a deeper look at Smotherman? Absolutely. Boy, I tell you what, Griot's been playing pretty well lately. Well, be honest with you, I'm probably going to wager Griot as soon as I shut off the stream. I kind of like what I saw tonight from Griot in a lot of aspects. So, probably put him on my betting card. Last question, or if somebody puts another one in here in the near future, you asked about Smotherman. We'll take a look at him. Hadn't been great as of late. Yeah. Like, do you have any confidence, that you're going to gain the 6.5 strokes with the irons again? Like, I know everybody was impressed with him, when he finished runner-up to Cognizant and then goes in top 15s the Players. But he was in much better ball striking form then. Like, he's kind of, I don't want to say lost it. It's just inconsistent right now. And he's not a good putter. What's he done here? Not great. Not great. Not a lot here to get me excited, Pre. Of the three that you asked about tonight with Vegas, Springer, and now Smotherman, I think Smotherman's easily the third of those three that you asked about. I would have said Johnny Vegas, but man, his course history here at least makes you think a little bit. Smotherman doesn't have anything going for him, it doesn't look like. So, I will leave us off on your top strokes gained players at TBC Deere Run. That's going to be it for a Data Dive show this evening. Thanks to Pre, Joanne, Moss, Freebird, Casey, Antoine, and Z for jumping into chat. Very, very much appreciated. Do me a favor, if you liked the deep statistical dives and analysis into the golf statistics, talking about the John Deere Classic this week and TBC Deere Run, I ask that you like the video. I really hate self-promo, but it does help me out if you do that. I enjoy what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician's view of what he sees. Sometimes I'm correct, sometimes I'm not. I always own when I'm not. But last week was certainly a step in the right direction after admittedly being pretty poor for the past 3 or so weeks. So looking forward to seeing if my analysis is right for the John Deere this week. Thanks to all of you for jumping in chat, and thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do. Like I said, taking a look at golf statistics, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Be on the lookout for any updates from Gabe. He always has his course form and course fit and recent form spreadsheets come out. And then be sure to set your reminders for Wednesday night. So, for all the wagers you've made so far this week for the John Deere, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the John Deere, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, May all your bets be profitable.